This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. Isn't a little church hymn or a suggestion? He's the lamp unto our feet. He's the means by which we avoid the rocks and the pitfalls. He knows how it's built. He knows how to read it. He knows where the treasure is buried. He knows where the pitfalls lie. He is the living vocabulary and expression of God. Must have been in my early 20s. I was fishing off the coast of Wemyss Bay on the west coast of Scotland, and the fishing was as good as usual, so I went for a walk, and I'm walking along the rocks. It's a large rock formation, and I came across this little pond, this beautiful, stunning little pond, no larger than a dining table, a large dining table, but a dining table, vegetation grown all around it. It was obviously created by the incoming and outgoing tides. It wasn't a stagnant pond. That's not the illustration I'm making. It was wonderful, a little world where everyone seemed to know everyone. Mr. Limpet with the newspaper under his arm. Morning, Mr. Crab. Morning, Mr. Limpet. Mussels and whelks and little fish. It genuinely took my breath away. This little world. A world where everybody knew your name, comfortable. The end of which any creature could see from anywhere else in the pond. It was nice and calm, easy. And then it dawned on me that around every 11 hours or so, when the tide came in, this little world would be engulfed by a bigger world. The depths and the wonders it could not possibly fathom. A world of adventure and monsters, of risk and danger. A world where anyone within that pond could certainly have their worth proven. A world where safety was invaded by the offer of freedom. But it was obvious that there were some in that pond who, when the tide arrived, couldn't hear the call or ignored it, the challenge. And so every time that tide knocked at the door, instead of biting on the hand that offered it, they hid themselves away, didn't want to know, wouldn't even look. They lived and died in that little pond, never having learned how wide, how long, how high, how deep. Oh, for sure there were dangers lurking out there that didn't exist within the safety of the little isolated pond. Oh, but the wonders and the glories and the depths. In Genesis 37, Joseph wasn't to know how foolish it was to begin a speech, I have a dream. Wasn't to know that he was about to embark upon a life that would be mesmerizingly like Christ's. In this chapter, you see the budding tribes of Israel, because of their jealousy, conspire against Joseph. Joseph, who would become the despised and rejected one of Israel, the firstborn of Jacob and his beloved Rachel, the son who looked different, given his ornate robe his father had prepared for him when he came into the world, the one who sounded different given his prophetic ability and his tendency to speak unwelcome truths, particularly in relation as to how he'd one day rule over the children of Israel. The one who was sent by his father to go look for his brothers. The one they sold for 20 pieces of silver. 30 would have been nicer, but I guess given that Joseph was no Jesus, 20 is enough to make the point. The one who was abandoned in the belly of the earth only to walk out alive, eventually escaping the murderous hands of his brothers by going down into Egypt, where he gained a name above all their names and was seated at the right hand of the king. The son who resisted and refused the temptations of Potiphar's Eve, and who was then led into the wilderness of prison life, where he suffered beside two other prisoners, one of which died and the other lived. The very same son whose brothers' knees would eventually bow and whose tongues would confess that Joseph was Lord. The one where every evil that was used against him was ultimately used for good. This stone those brothers rejected. I wish the Bible was a little bit more obvious sometimes, don't you? The Joseph narrative opens itself not like a clover where the leaves are easily counted and distinguishable from one another, but rather like a rose whereby every petal pulled only reveals another three behind it. Of course, the same could be said about the entire body of Scripture and the unfolding drama of the human family. So where to look and what points to make? Well, if this wasn't a historical event in the life of Israel, say for example, this story didn't take place at all and the only reference we ever had of it was as a parable spoken by Jesus. If Jesus spoke the Joseph story as a parable, what would Jesus want us to conclude? Where would he expect our eyes to be drawn? What would he be driving our attention toward? Well, in that setting, it becomes a little clearer, for considering the parable of the wicked tenants and the parable of the prodigal, he did tell us such tales, always driving our hearts and thoughts towards the Father in the stories, for it is always and only in the context of the Father that humanity finds its meaning and purpose. And in the Joseph story, not unlike others, we find a broken-hearted father, Jacob, weeping over the actions and the choices of his children by rejecting the son he sent out to find them. But I wonder if the goat that they killed to cover Joseph's coat in blood, I wonder if they made a delicious stew out of it. I wonder if it felt like the skin of Esau. Karma. What goes around comes around. Even unbelievers have recognized that this world of ours has a very weird way of forcing us to taste the medicine that we inflict upon others. But Scripture forbids us to view these things as mere chance, but rather forces us to view them as eventualities, inevitabilities, built into the very fabric of our reality, that what is sown, except perhaps by grace or love covering a multitude of sin, what is sown will be reaped. By the measure you judge, you will be judged. If you insist on living by the sword, then you'll die by the sword. You can build your house on the sand if you want to. You're absolutely free enough to do that. But when a storm comes, I didn't make sand for foundational purposes, God would say. If you want to take something that I didn't make for that and make it that, then you'll pay for it. If you want to build upon things that are built to fail, for the purpose that you're using them. When you use the things that I have made for the wrong reason and the wrong purpose, ignoring the ways that I have fashioned and structured, when you force the squares through the round holes because they think they're a circle today, then it's inevitable that the house is coming down. Sand couldn't give a hang how well intentioned those who build upon it are. This path that we're on, as you've already experienced, is going to have good seed coming down to us from above. Blessings all over the place. But if we don't protect the seed, if we don't value the seed or nourish the seed, it's going to be swooped upon and taken by others. If we treat it like a fad, it'll burn up in the midday sun. And if we don't guard it, it's eventually going to be strangled by the evil that's around it. But if we value his words, tend to his understanding, treasure his wisdom, that seed holds the potential, the possibility to produce 30, 60, 100-fold, to blossom into our lives blessings as numerous as the stars in the sky. Hearken to my voice isn't simply a command, it's sound advice. If we want the odds of this world in our favor, he's the one who built it. Who better than the engineer to instruct you how the thing actually works? And if you want the best results from the thing that I have made, read my instruction. This is my beloved son. Listen to him. Isn't a little church hymn or a suggestion? He's the lamp unto our feet. He's the means by which we avoid the rocks and the pitfalls. He knows how it's built. He knows how to read it. He knows where the treasure is buried. He knows where the pitfalls lie. He is the living vocabulary and expression of God. Man, we're a long way from the garden, and yet sometimes it looks as though we're still not out the garden. And it was all so easy at first. An entire universe I give to you, just leave the tree alone. No, that's all yours. No, that's not yours. Leave that. Everything else, though, everything else is yours. Lock, stock, and bar, just don't touch that. Look, what is not yours is not yours. It's that simple. I don't care if it looks good, it's not yours. Leave it alone. We laugh at the fallen couple, and then we discover that all of us were born into the garden. We face our choices and our challenges and our trees and our floods and our wildernesses. Where's your brother Cain? The first post-fall instruction we receive is a map to navigate our way through the curse that we invited. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? If you don't do what is right, sin is crouching at the door. It desires to have you. You must master it. At Babel, we're told, you don't need a tower to find meaning or a name. You got my meaning, my name. At the flood, we're told to content ourselves by only seeking good all the time. And through Abraham, we hear him say, let me guide you. Now that you've heard my voice and that you've chosen to come, let me guide you, help you, venture through the wilderness now into which you must walk. Through Jacob, you don't have to fight. You don't have to con and connive your way through lives in order to wrestle blessings from my hand. I want to give you good things. And in this chapter of Genesis, even if all your brothers would turn against you, I got this. No weapon forged against you will prevail. Well, there's so many of them. Doesn't matter how many there are. Things are not as they appear. They're going to tell you evil is good and good is evil. I'm telling you, the exalted things are coming down. You must trust me. I'm going to turn this world on its head. If your enemy's hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Oh, the blessedness, the happiness of those who find life and living within my kingdom. Happy will be the unhappy. Joyful will be the mourning. Rich will be the poor. Laughing will be the weeping. Trust me, he says, when the world comes knocking and begging and deceiving, because that's its native tongue, those who find refuge in the cleft of my rock, those who fly beneath the wind in my wings, will find the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding, the courage, and the strength to be able to thrust their 2 copper coins straight into the heart of the beast. The older I get, the more I read, hopefully the more centered I become. I'm realizing that this story of ours, contained within this book of ours, it's not a collection of quaint little sayings. It isn't earthly messages with heavenly meanings. It's not a rule book or a blueprint, and it's certainly not a collection of legal contractual bindings. It's a description of reality itself. It's actually how things exist. It's how things really are, how things really work, how things are meant to function, and the heart behind it all is revealed as a heart that we can trust. Consider the grass, he says. Consider it means even the fields are theological. Consider the birds means that these little flying musicians have good stories to tell, realities to explain. Goats and sheep can teach you if you know how to look. My kingdom, you want to know what my kingdom's like? You'd be asleep before I finish explaining to you. It's like a man who sows seed. It's like the seed itself. My kingdom's like yeast. It's like a place where righteous shine like the sun. It's like treasure in a field. It's like the most magnificent pearl. It's like a net. Those who learn of it are like the owner of a house who keep bringing out new stuff, old stuff, new stuff, old stuff. It's the place that belongs to children. It's like a landowner. It's like a king. Give me a coin. Give me a coin. Whose image is this? Even the things that you make speak beyond themselves. One of the greatest songs ever written. Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. That really needs that F behind it to sound good, but there you are. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. You want to change the world? There's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. One of the greatest musical numbers ever written. Standard chord progression. Difficult to sing unaccompanied because we find it hard to hear diminished chords in our mind. But my point is that that we can't even write a song about a chocolate factory without whatever this is pulling at us, daring us to know more, understand more, trust more, dare more, dream more, imagine more about chocolate. And what do we do? So often, what do we do with it all? We turn it into how far you can walk in a Sabbath. We turn it into these 5 things. We take what is designed to set our lives ablaze and fill it with meaning and purpose and reduce it all to legalized religious rituals. We covet and we protect our favorite little doctrines, our favorite little traditions. And it isn't that these things don't matter. They do matter. In fact, they matter even more than the legalists could dare to dream. But it's that they exist to bring life. And life in abundance. But you can't fashion hammer from a paper. You can't drink from a sieve. You can't shave with a plum. You can't burn rock. You can't shelter under daffodils. You can't boil ice. He has created things in such a fashion that by following him offers us the best chance of it all. And usually all it takes is getting things in the right order. Nebuchadnezzar went from the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be cut into pieces and their houses will be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. He went from that in the leap of a single chapter to, is not this the great Babylon that I have built by my mighty power and by the glory of my majesty? Bible says, while the words were still on his lips, a voice from heaven came and said, "Excuse me?" It matters how we live and what we do and what choices we make. But we can't do that unless we see it right. Before anything becomes a way of doing, it must first become a way of seeing. He came to make blind men see. And if we get it wrong, for Pete's sake, they used common sense to crucify Jesus. Better that one man die for a nation than the entire nation. That just makes good old sense. How can you get common sense wrong? The seed our Father graciously spreads upon our paths exists so that the world can have people in it who can laugh with those who laugh and mourn with those who mourn. They exist so that we can get to speak words of great hope into the ears of the grieving, that the hungry might eat and the blind might see. They exist to bring light into our darkness and order into our chaos. Oh, I'm not saying that we treat Scripture like some mystical LSD trip. We've all seen what happens to people who do that. No, we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. That's the way of things. We work this earth, even his earth, we work this by the sweat of our brow until we get good fruit from it. We allow it to serve the one who wrote it, him who has entrusted us with it. we take hold of it until it compels us to preach good news to the poor, until it inspires us to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind. We use it to release the oppressed. We use it as he used it, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Oh, such news we have for the world, if they could only hear it. We use it to share with them. We use it to warn them. We use it to instruct them. We even use it to affirm the things that they get right and encourage them in it. It was a Roman centurion that Jesus said, "Never in all Israel have I seen faith like this." That sometimes we can hear what they say and reply, "Well, yes, that's actually true. There is a land somewhere beyond the rainbow where bluebirds fly. That's true. And that all the dreams you ever dared to dream really do come true." We affirm when we hear it that the best thing to do in a storm is to walk through it with your head held high and not to be afraid of the dark. Because at the end of the storm, there is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. These are our words. As we encourage them to walk on through the wind and walk on through the rain, though their dreams be tossed and blown, walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. These are our words. And the world gets to sing them better than we can? God forbid. And they come under our roof and we get well, sit down, I've got a story for you. I bet you're wondering how far you can walk on a Sabbath. Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. He stands at the door and knocks. Bless him. He's always at the door, knocking. For those with ears to hear. 2,000 years ago it was now that the tide first came in. And it's been coming in ever since, offering itself to every generation. Its own chance to go out into all the ocean, to hear the call, the challenge, the adventure of it all, to see life in all its abundant greatness, to not be stymied and held down and darkened, but to be lightened and free. Oh, for sure. Out there in the depths, of course it's more dangerous out there. Safety no longer plays first fiddle. Freedom does. Oh, but the depths and the wonders and the height and the length and the breadth. Why would we ever content ourselves with a shallow little pond when our Father has prepared for us an ocean? And how dare the world think it's got a better story to tell, a better song to sing than we do? God forbid. Come with me and you'll see. Chocolate, for Pete's sake. Chocolate inspired that from them. Thoughts, comments, questions?
you.